Hey guys, so today I am going to be sharing all of my thoughts on Twilight, rereading it as an adult, because first I'll get into my background with Twilight and why I decided to reread it. So I know Twilight obviously has a lot of bad connotations. I think pretty much everyone agrees it's not a good book, it's really a bad romance, all this stuff. But when it came out and when I first read it, I was in high school, I think I was like 15 or so at the time, and I loved Twilight. Like, I was one of those girls who read it and became completely obsessed with it. I felt like it was really easy for me to get obsessed with things when I was that age. And at the time, everyone really loved Twilight. There wasn't too much Twilight hate going on. I feel like the Twilight hate kind of started after the movie came out. So I thought it was a great thing. I had never had a boyfriend up until that point. So I was living vicariously through Bella, and I just thought Edward was like the perfect boyfriend, and their romance and their love story was just amazing and beautiful. And I seriously was so obsessed, and I wanted an Edward for myself, and all of the cheesiness of like a teen girl obsessing over a fictional boy was me. And so I really loved Twilight. That is my background. I feel like there's no shame in hiding it, because that's just what I liked then. So my cousin was just visiting from Canada, and we had been in the Twilight craze together. So we'd read the books, we'd watched the movies, we'd made playlists for songs that reminded us of Twilight and of like Bella and Edward and their relationship and all these stupid sappy love songs, and it was so dramatic and angsty, and we loved it. So she was here, and I don't even know how it got started, but we were talking about Twilight and then decided to reread it, because I honestly hadn't read it since high school, but it had been so long since I'd read them. And I know I'd mentioned it here before that I was kind of planning on doing like a reading vlog of Twilight, which I didn't get around to doing, but I still wanted to share my thoughts on it because I did read it, I think it was like a week ago or so, and I just want to share how I feel about it now, reading it as an adult. So first things first, this video will contain spoilers for Twilight and maybe the whole series, because honestly these books came out so long ago that if you haven't read them by now, you probably already know what happens in them anyway. So yes, there will be spoilers. And second thing, this video isn't intended to be like a Twilight bashing video, because there's enough of that out there. I just want to share like how I felt reading it again as an adult. So going into it as an adult, it already was a lot different. And now I want to say first too that I did rewatch the first movie, Twilight, before reading the book, and there is no comparison, I think, between the book and the movie. I think the first movie was just like so cheesy and lame, and it was so cringy. I kind of liked it when it came out, but I still didn't like it enough compared to the books. And seriously though, that is one thing I have to say. Reading the book, it is a lot better than the movie. So it has that going for it. I feel like Bella's character is a lot more formed in the book, and she's just like, I don't know, this like ghost of a person in the movie who has no emotion, but that's not really what she's like at all in the book. So if you've only watched Twilight, I would say that the book isn't as cheesy as that, although it's definitely cheesy. So I started off, you know, with expectations that were relatively high, because I'd read these books before and loved them, and going into it I knew, okay, I'm an adult, I have different experiences now, I've read a lot more books and a lot more love stories since then, so I'm probably gonna come at this one a little differently. So I was going in thinking that I was gonna enjoy it, and I didn't hate it, but I definitely noticed a lot of problems with this book that didn't even register to me the first time I was reading it. I mean, I didn't notice how prone to anger Edward was, and how he was always angry and Bella always was living in fear of his anger, and I never picked up on how bad that dynamic was until I was reading it now with a more mature mind, if you want to call it that. I still feel like I'm not an adult, but for the sake of this video, I am an adult compared to what I was when I read this the first time. So yeah, Edward did not seem as great a boyfriend, he's not even a person, or great a vampire as I first thought he was. And for some reason, I felt like Bella and Edward had this really deep connection and understanding for each other, but reading it this time, I really didn't get that sense. I think I just got so caught up in, oh, they say they're in love, so they're in love, but this time around when I was reading it, I just didn't see how the relationship really formed. It was just like a crazy obsession. Bella was very, very obsessed with Edward, and then he was with her against his better judgment, and he constantly brought it up. Like, he belittled her intelligence by saying she shouldn't be around him, and she was just okay with that. And there were so many things that I was like, did I not? I guess I didn't have a problem with this before. And then once Bella and Edward are in a relationship, I didn't know how serious it was and how quickly it got serious. So timeline span, there's this one day where Bella and Edward, they go to this meadow, they define their relationship. It's the first day they've ever really spent together, and they are like deeply in love with each other. The next day, Bella meets the family, and then they have the baseball game when the other vampires come, and then the whole craziness happens. Bella's like forsaking her whole life for Edward and all this stuff. But that literally was only 2 days. I didn't realize that the relationship didn't really even happen until the near end of the book, and then it went so dramatic so quickly. So I guess that was a point I hadn't really noticed, that there wasn't really any relationship until all of a sudden it was there, and all of a sudden she was like risking her life for him and like professing this insane love for him. So very insta-lovey, which I didn't pick up on before, but like insta-lovey in like a Romeo and Juliet kind of sense, where it just went so dramatic so quickly. Also, with Bella and Edward's relationship, I did not see how commanding and Edward was. He was always telling Bella what to do, and she would protest, and he literally would force her to do things that she didn't want to do. And later she would say like, oh, I guess it like was okay that that happened, or oh yeah, I guess that was what was best for me. But like, he did force her to do a lot of things that she like was adamantly against, and only came around to once she had been in the situation, which I don't know, that really rubbed me the wrong way because I'd never read it that way. And just seeing how Edward would just enforce his will upon her really made me feel like kind of gross for reading this book, and for at one time really loving it and thinking Edward was this amazing, wonderful guy, when he kind of just decided what to do and forced Bella into doing it. And I don't know, the way he treated her a lot of the time didn't seem like a loving way you would treat someone. Like, he was in control of her and very controlling. I guess that is how I would describe Edward. So very controlling in a way that I had never picked up on before. So yeah, I read Twilight again. I had a very different experience reading Twilight as an adult than I had before. So overall, I don't think Twilight unfortunately held up for me. I really was kind of expecting or hoping it would, but as I've said before, I have since read so many better love stories that are genuine and heartfelt and real, in a sense that this one is not. And yeah, slightly disappointed in my rereading experience. I was gonna plan on reading more of the series, but honestly, I don't have any interest in reading. So I did really like New Moon when I was reading New Moon many years ago. It seems it actually may have been like 10 years ago. So yeah, that is many years ago. I did really like New Moon, and I did watch the movie for New Moon 2 when my cousin Sarah was here. And New Moon as a movie is definitely a lot better than the book, but there were still so many problems even in the movie that I was noticing that I'm like, listen, I don't want to think negatively and have all these negative thoughts and just read it to be angry at it, because that's not a good reason to read something, I think. So I'm just gonna hold off reading any more of this series. I kind of got the idea that it's not for me anymore. I've definitely, unfortunately, grown out of it, but it doesn't take away from the fact that at one point in time, I did really love this series, but it is so interesting just comparing how I felt about it then to how I felt about it now. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on Twilight, reading it as an adult. If you have thoughts about Twilight, I would love to hear them below. I think this was just a really great experience to reread a book that I loved as like a child. I wasn't a child then, but for the sake of this video, we'll say that I was a child. And I just liked being able to read it again with new eyes. I thought it was pretty interesting and eye-opening. So those are my thoughts on Twilight. Let me know yours below. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading.